Ask me about Gigi. Well, we're going to ask Michel Gauthier of Vermont Tel, VTEL, a little bit about his fiber network. This is Ken. We're at the Broadband Properties Summit here in Dallas, Texas. So why don't you tell us a little bit, the folks who don't know about Vermont Tel and your extensive network. It's much more extensive than I thought.
Let's see. So Vermont Telephone, we're an independent telco in the southern part of Vermont. Some people have heard of Killington, for example, which is one of our service areas, but we serve 14 or so towns. We then, because the cost of fiber was so costly the cost of internet bandwidth was so costly beginning several years ago, that we found it less expensive to build our own network, so that we built a fiber network down in New York and Boston. We're in the major fiber hotels in New York and Boston, or in several of them. And so we bring in a whole lot of bandwidth. We serve some of the largest universities in the Northeast now, including one in Montreal, one in Cambridge, one in Hanover, New Hampshire, one in Burlington, Vermont, and the like. And we also have bought a whole lot of wireless licenses over the last 8 or 10 years. So we've got really a pretty massive amount of wireless bandwidth, over 100 meg average over the whole Vermont, the Vermont region over into western New Hampshire and upstate New York. And so we're looking forward to bringing all that together if we can be successful with the whole ARRA world, which is, a huge question mark, a very competitive environment, a sort of a who knows.
Right.
But we had fun writing applications for how to use all that spectrum and all that bandwidth to get to the most unserved parts of Vermont and the edges of New York and New Hampshire. We came up with 114,000 unserved households, and then came up with a 4G LTE plan to really serve all of them, and at a pretty cost-effective price. So that one of our kind of big pitches to ARRA is gosh, we can make the problem of, gosh, how do we get to all those people? People in Vermont have been scratching their head, talking about it, having discussions, panels, broadband conferences, legislation for the 15 years that I've been there. And so where they're saying, well, gosh, guys, that question was yesterday. Today we know the answer. It just isn't an unknown anymore. We know a cost-effective way to do it. And the part that we're having both fun with and finding frustrating, it's fun, but it's not that much fun, is that people have sort of built a way of life around tearing their hair out saying, oh my God, we're so bandwidth poor, don't really welcome it when you say, you know what, we've solved that problem. Right. Because they've sort of built a way of life around saying, my God, we're bandwidth poor. We've got somebody running for governor, a good guy I know pretty well. I saw a presentation he made in Boston recently about Vermont, saying we're the 49th worst place in the country in terms of bandwidth. We're the worst place there is for internet. Why, it's just a catastrophe. Why people are, waiting outside libraries using their laptops because they can't get bandwidth. And we say to him, yeah, but we can solve it. And he says, don't tell me that. Well, I'm way too busy trying to get elected. Right. So that's kind of problem one that we're having fun with. The second issue that we're very involved with is we've got fiber to homes. The cost of that is also very material. But we started fooling around with active fiber with Gigi to homes, and using both Calyx and Juniper technologies. Okay. And that's working really, really superbly. I mean, so we're pretty persuaded that a lot of the, and perhaps I'm going way too far, but I'll share it with you for the fun of it because It's a nice day and we've known each other for a few years, but I almost think that it's not nuts to say that we can sort of see where the whole broadband picture is going in the next 10 years. A lot of pieces are falling into place. We see that, for example, Singapore and Hong Kong have talked about active fiber Gigi to homes. We see that that's becoming quite possible in major cities around the world and probably in the U.S. We see that LTE 4G is looking at bringing 25 to 100 meg wireless to people. We see a sort of a future where there's a thick route, Gigi, multi-gig to homes over fiber, a thin route, 100 meg wireless mobile. The question to us is how much of that ever gets out into rural America? That's for us a big, big, big question. So why we like ARRA, why we like this round one, round two stuff, is that it can work if somebody else puts up 75 or 80% of the capital. It can work, but if nobody puts up 75 or 80% of the capital, a wise investor just simply wouldn't undertake those investments to get to areas that have 10 or 12 homes per mile. So we've kind of found this whole process a lot of fun because we've begun to say, gee, we sort of think we're beginning to see the outlines of where the how the big problem gets resolved, or how the future sort of shakes out in the U.S. in broadband. But simultaneously, it isn't at all clear, if there's not an ARRA type environment, how that future extends into rural America.
Well, it's interesting. We just saw a presentation that you mentioned was very similar to what you had proposed. Of course, the Navajo, of course, the other opposite side of the country, but similar issues, I suppose.
Yeah, but exactly, a very similar number of people they're trying to serve, and the costs per person with a LTE 4G wireless network are similar. But again, if somebody wasn't to be putting up a big share of the capital cost of that, a normal investor wouldn't find any return at all on investment to reaching out to something as beautiful as that Navajo reservation. You mentioned you'd been out there, and you'd been there as a younger man. You drive a long way seeing very few people. If an investor had the choice of, say, investing there or investing in Phoenix, it's just hard to make the choice to invest there, beautiful as it may be.
Yeah, that was the first and only stepper switch I saw, so out there in that about 15 years ago. So, Michelle, I appreciate your time.
Nice to see
you.
you.
Thank you.